Hey, it's just JP here, and in today's video I will take a closer look at my last short film, the creative process. We will look into the techniques and details that I have used to plan, direct, shoot and act in my first ever short film, while still being affected by COVID. Disclaimer, I'm not a professional that worked for many years in the film industry. I'm just somebody that needed to tell a story. So this is my journey, let's get started with the video. The first step is planning. Having a plan is essential with those kind of projects. I myself changed a lot from the original video, but what remained was the core idea and the core blueprint. When your short film has a lot of dialogue that mine doesn't have, when your short film consists of a lot of dialogue, it is good to have a blueprint. Because I'm a little bit chaotic, it made it much easier for me to use a storyboard and plan it out step by step. Now let's go over my personal experience. Most of the scenes were just filmed in one room, where I set up my camera, my equipment and my desk. This made it even easier for me to work while still being restricted by COVID, making the planning phase even more important. You need to create a master plan for the people that you are filming with and all the locations you want to film at. So that if you pick a location that you want to film at, you know if it's available and therefore rent or ask for permission. In my case, I filmed all of my scenes inside, except 2 scenes that I filmed outdoors. The breakout scene was on the top of a building that I had the permission to film at. For the other scene, at the beach, I went to a nearby public beach. In the end, it was important for me to learn how to use my surroundings as effective as possible and plan them into my filming routine, so I don't waste any time. In the beginning of the short film, I intentionally repeated some of the clips to make it look like that the protagonist is stuck in a loop. A loop where creativity and the creative process can't fully evolve. In this case, it was very important to film each scene similarly. That meant not only repeat them, but as well film them multiple times in order to convey that illusion of being stuck in a loop. If I would critique myself on this part, I would point out that I could refilm some of the scenes and repetitions, rearrange the camera, so each shot looks similar, but isn't just a copy-paste repetition. But that's something for my next short film. Another very important part of creating that short was to nail the sound effects. There were a few key sound effects that I used to keep up the illusion of being stuck in a loop. You, that means the audience, will exactly know what is going on without seeing a picture. You just hear the sound effect and know directly that, for example, the protagonist is waking up, brewing coffee or working. Next one is paced and tension. For me, this step was very important. Actually, crucial, because I needed to use the repetition, speed it up and create tension so the viewer watches the whole film and not just parts of it. It is here where I try to intensify the illusion that I just created, using the ticking of a clock at the beginning of my short film. The sound effect in the back is a constant reminder that the deadline is coming closer and closer and the work still isn't finished. Maybe you noticed, but this ticking is getting quicker and quicker over time and reaches its high at the break point. This is a very minor change that I try to implement. I haven't had any experience in those kind of editing methods, but I think in the end it worked out pretty well. Talking of small details, I added another layer of tension with adding small subtle zooms throughout the whole video. In the beginning I did not add any digital zooms. But then as we enter the second and then the final repetition, the zoom intensifies. Then I decided to implement a night to day time-lapse in order to convey a sense of time passing by. I shot this one a few months prior. I set up my camera on the DJI Ronin SC, a compact and powerful gimbal that allowed me to create a time-lapse with a similar motion and speed. I already had a little bit of experience with time-lapses, so I tried to use this to my advantage and put it into the short film. One at 2 o'clock at night and the other one at 7 o'clock in the morning. Yes, you sometimes need to get up very early. You need to create your own pace and tension and somehow convey a feeling of immersion. This is a matter of editing. The footage that I planned to film and collect was now put to the final test by my editing skills. The question was here if I shot everything the right way. This step is a very time-consuming one, and one that requires a lot of dedication. And you know what they say, film is made in the editing room. In this case it took me nearly 2 months, multiple reshoots and a lot of time. The techniques, the speed up, the sound effects and the time-lapse only had one purpose, and that's it, to reach the breakpoint. The breaking point of the creative process was the phone smashing scene. I used an old broken phone and, well, made it worse. I used 2 phones, both look very similar. After I created tension, I went for something I like to call the silence before the storm. I traveled to a near public beach and recorded a steady wide-angle shot of me sitting at the beach. Fairly easy, right? Then I went to a nearby rooftop that I had access to and waited for the sunset. I tried to create as much contrast as possible, so that the so-called silence before the storm will not only be interrupted by the contrast of colors, blue and orange, but as well through the sound effects and the smashing of the phone. The redemption scene where failure leads to success was hard to approach for multiple reasons. First off, COVID. As said before, because of the pandemic, the challenge was here to work mostly alone, trying to direct, shoot, edit and act all by myself. Because I only had good experience in the field of editing and shooting, I needed to work creatively around it. The challenge here in the last shot was to create motion without moving the camera. Simpler said than done. I just decided to take my tripod, position my camera and press record. I did not have any possibility of planning a manual zoom, so I just added it in post. I needed to use the tools that I had as effective as possible. I remembered that the better the recording quality is, the further I can zoom in. The second problem that I encountered with the scene was the storage. Because I was recording the entire short film on a Sony Alpha 6300 with a fairly high bitrate in 4K, I needed to clear out all of my storage and back it up onto my computer. This last scene took me at least half an hour to film, but I think in the end it was worth it. The protagonist accomplishes redemption and accepting his failure and flaws. This failure sparks the real creative process inside him, that he was searching for all this time. Your first film won't be perfect, and neither was mine. And actually, it shouldn't be. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that as creators, we should always try to put our best work out there. But if it's your first one, like mine, we can't do everything in perfect fashion, because we're still learning. Learning by doing, right? And in my case, after publishing my first ever short film, I got a lot of good constructive feedback back. For me, the creative process will be never finished and never perfect, but what remains are the things that I have learned. The last scene of the creative process depicts the main protagonist, looking straight into the camera and breaking the fourth wall, saying, "Now is your time to tell your story." So please, as in the short film, I invite you to tell your story in the comments down below. What are your experiences in doing creative work, being under pressure, or simply are you here for the first time? If so, please take the time to like and subscribe, because as said before, those videos take a long time. Especially the last short film took me a few months to execute and to produce. This is JP, stay safe, stay creative, see you next time.